Greetings and salutations, and thank you for clicking on the video. I do appreciate it. I am very excited to show you all the new features in the latest XBT version 1.7. For those of you who have been following the development of XBT, I think you're really going to appreciate some of the new little features that are in it. They all came from you. XBT started out as just a little tool that I used myself. I decided to share it, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of people. And so it has evolved quite a bit over time, and now it is a full-fledged functioning program. So for those of you who are clicking on this video for the first time, or a video of mine for the first time, and you don't know about XBT, what is it? It is a tool that you can use to create a reliable backup of everything that is in the /home directory on your Linux computer. It is designed to hold user data. It does not attempt to try and back up the entire system. It creates a snapshot style backup that is updated every time that you run XBT. It is designed specifically to run with external drives and external drives only. XBT makes doing an external backup ridiculously simple, because once you have it set up and everything is good to go, all you have to do is plug an external drive in it that is into the machine that is a dedicated drive for XBT, and pop open a terminal, type in XBT, walk away, it makes the backup. So this video is going to be divided into 3 sections. The first part of the video, I'm going to show you in detail how to set up an XBT drive and what needs to be done to make that work with the program. Then we're going to take the program through its paces. I'm going to show you all of the features, and then at the end of the video, for those of you who are interested in such things, I am going to actually walk you through the code, and there's been a lot of big changes to that code since the last time that I did that. So let's get a drive going. Now I have a USB drive plugged into the machine that I'm currently just calling junk drive. What kind of drive do you need for XBT? Well, you need a drive that is big enough to hold your backup data, which would be everything that is in your /home directory on your Linux system. So if you have a small system and you only have a little bit of data, no big deal. You could probably use a USB stick and it would work just fine. You know, like a 64 gigabyte USB stick would be great. A little bigger drive, if you have more data, like a 500 gigabyte Western Digital Passport drive, there's great drives for this. You can get one of those for right around 50 US. And if you have more data that you're keeping up with, or a whole lot of systems that you want to back up, you might want to spend some money and get yourself a drive with a lot of capacity, like 1 or 2 terabytes. It's entirely up to you what you do with this. It just has to be big enough to hold all the data that you want to store on it. Now, the other thing that I want to say is you probably want to use a reliable drive. You don't want to use one that's been banged around an awful lot, because backups are really important. And one of the reasons that drives me to work on so many backup utilities, I've worked on XBT on my own, worked with Jeremy O'Connell on CYA, is because over the years I have worked with a lot of people who have had something horrible happen to their computer. Their hard drive died, or they clicked the wrong thing and blew out a bunch of data, and then they've come to me and said, hey, this is the situation. And I will say, do you have a backup? And they say, no. Or they have a backup that is in some proprietary format from some commercial backup utility, and now they can't get to it for whatever reason. So that's what XBT does. It creates a reliable backup, and it also keeps it in the open. And we'll talk more about that as the video rolls on. So what do you need to do? Take your drive, stick it in the machine, and get a tool that will help you format it. There are a lot of tools for the Linux desktop that do this. You could use something like gparted. You could use GNOME Disks, does it quite well. If you happen to be running Linux Mint, then you have access to this wonderful little tool called the USB stick formatter. This works with large drives. Don't worry about it. Even if you got a 2 terabyte drive, it'll just fill the drive up. That's all it'll do. So you want to make sure that you choose the correct drive, of course, and you want to choose a file system which is Linux native, like ext4. If you guys who are a little bit more advanced, you might want to use XFS or whatever. I don't care. It has to be a Linux native file system. Do not use NTFS or FAT32, because if you do, then certain functions aren't going to work properly. Mainly, file permissions are not set with those file systems. Those file systems are compatible with Windows machines and other machines like Macs or whatever, but they do not keep the correct permissions that Linux uses. So it has to be a Linux native file system to use the advanced features. And if you try and restore from a drive that has an NTFS or FAT32 system on it, chances are it's going to mess up something in your system. So just keep that in mind. I mean, people have done it, I know. Okay, so you want to make sure that the drive is going to be labeled XBT _, capital D, lowercase RIV. So just like you see on your screen, it would be uppercase XBT _ uppercase D RIVE. That is the correct label. If the XBT program does not see a drive with that label, it won't run. And I'll demonstrate that later on as we roll along. So we'll go ahead and format this drive. And this should not take the system very long to do it all. And yes, it doesn't matter what you've used the drive for in the past. It makes no difference what file system is on it. It makes no difference what files are on it. This tool in particular just blows everything off the drive and starts over. So even if you're using like a USB stick that you use to put an old version of Ubuntu on or something like that, use it as a boot disk, it'll work. Okay, so we're going to unplug the drive now physically from the machine and plug it back in so the system will find it. Because when you do the format, it unmounts it completely from the entire system. It doesn't even know it's there. So we plugged it back in and it looks like it worked. It's called XBT drive, which is good. And it is, let's see if we can write to it. This is the next most important thing. So yes, I can create a document here. I am good to go. Now, that's the next important thing. Not only does the drive have to be labeled XBT, but the user who's going to be running the program needs to have access to the drive. If, for some reason, the user who is running XBT does not have permission to write to that drive, then it won't work. It'll kick it out and say, no way. This is a security feature. So this, well, it's a security feature, and it just kind of is the way it is, because that way it makes it so other people can't do a whole lot. I mean, they can probably plug it in and see it, but they might not be able to delete things off of it and all that kind of stuff. So that's a good thing. All right, we can go ahead and delete this file. What happens if your drive, for some reason, gets formatted, you have the correct label, and then you pop it open here like this, and you go to right-click, and this is ghosted out? You can't actually write anything to the drive. How do you fix that? Well, I'm going to show you. What you need to do is open up a file manager as root. Now in Linux Mint, it's real easy. Just right-click and then choose Open as Root. Put in your administrator password, and then you will have this open. Click anywhere on the drive, go to Properties, and go to the permissions and see who owns the drive. If the drive is owned by root, then you will need to change that to your own username. So click here. Now you notice there's a lot in here. Linux creates a lot of user accounts for different programs and services that run on the machine. We're actually worried about real people. So just make sure that that's what's there, and you're good to go. Go ahead and close that, and now XBT drive is set up. So the next thing that we need to do is get our hands on XBT, and we need to get it in the right place so it can work for us. I'm going to show you how to do that today in an Ubuntu Mate machine, because we haven't given Ubuntu Mate a lot of love, and I'm going to show that it works on all kinds of different systems. So to get a hold of the latest XBT, you will go to easylinux.com, and of course there are links in the video description. And then you want to go to the bash scripts page, and you want to scroll down and you want to look for something called the Easy Linux bash script collection. It's right here. XBT is part of that. Now the other scripts in here, they're just little tools. They're mainly to give people who are getting into scripting something to kind of bounce off of. Some of them are quite specific to my needs, but I've shared them just so people can see them and they can, you know, play around with them. But you don't need to worry about it. If you're just interested in XBT, you can throw it away. So the next thing that you need to do is download the XBT zip file. It's very tiny. It'll only take a couple of seconds to download. And once you download it, it should appear in your downloads folder. There it is. I didn't actually download it. It's already here. Haha. Now, we open it up. Just double click to open. Archive Manager opens that up. Click on the folder in there. Now you see XBT. That's the file that we are wondering what to do with next, right? So where do you put XBT to get it to work? Well, I will show you where you put it. You got a couple of options here, but the one that I prefer is to create a personal bin directory in your home directory. And that is just simply a matter of right-clicking, creating a new directory, and giving it the name bin, B-I-N. Now you want to log out of your account and log back in. And any Ubuntu-based system should see that, and then it should add it to your path statement, which means that when you open up a terminal, you should be able to just type in whatever command that you want that happens to be living in your bin folder, and it should run. This is for personal scripts. These are things that you write yourself. You could also use it for like installations of Firefox directly from Mozilla that are just unique to your personal account. Any program that you compile from source code or scripts that you download wherever, it goes in here. And the thing about this is that other users on the machine will not have access to them. Any file that you put in here to run cannot be run with sudo privileges up front. So if you would type in sudo XBT, it's not going to work, okay? Because this is your personal stuff, and when you type sudo, things are run as the root user. Don't worry, XBT is designed to be run without sudo privileges up front, and it will ask for them when and if it needs those privileges. So to get it in here, all you would do is come over here to this Archive Manager that we have open and drag and drop the file. Now I'm not going to do that right now because what's in here is the old version of XBT, and this is the new one which I am demonstrating. So we can go ahead and just, we don't actually want to do that. We're going to cancel and go ahead and close the manager there. One last thing to look for is that XBT is actually going to be executable. So right click on it, go to Properties, go to Permissions, and make sure that Execute as a Program is selected at the bottom. Allow execution of file as program. Okay, so what if you create your bin directory and for some reason it doesn't work? Is there somewhere else you want to put it? Maybe you don't want to create a bin directory for whatever reason. Yes, there is, and I'll show you that very quickly because some Linux distributions do not automatically recognize the bin directory in your home directory and put it in the path statement. Now you can do one of two things. You can put it in the path statement manually, look up the documentation, you can find out how to do that, or you can put it somewhere where the system is probably already looking for it. And the place to do that is in the USR directory, which is short for Universal System Resources. I've also heard that called Unix System Resources. It goes back a long way. Not exactly sure which one is correct. I'm sure somebody will point that out in the comments now that I've said that. So anyway, you'll notice that we have a directory in here called local. We want to go to that, and then we want to go to bin. User local bin is where you want to be. And you notice there's nothing in here because this is where you can put programs like XBT and make them available to all of the users on the computer. That's where they go. So there's a couple of alternatives. Now that you've done that, you have it in there, you've logged in, you've logged out, we're ready to start using XBT. So let's connect the XBT drive we just created, and now we get to walk through all of the stuff in the program. And I realize that for those of you who have already used XBT or are very familiar with how to use scripts and things like that, this might seem a little tedious, but A lot of people who watch my videos are brand new to Linux. So we have our XBT drive up and running. We're going to open up a terminal. And then let's go ahead and full screen that terminal. Make the font just a little bit bigger so it's easier for other people to see. How about a little bit bigger? Yeah, make it kind of huge there. Okay, let's back that off one. Some stuff's not going to render right if it's that big. Okay, here we go. So, to use XBT for its basic purpose, which is creating a backup of your system, all you got to do is take that drive, stick it in the machine, and then run XBT. And if it can recognize the drive, it will go forward and actually create the backup. So XBT with no arguments will do that functionality. So let's walk through that right now. So I type in XBT, and the first thing it's going to do is ask for root privileges. And now it is going to create a backup of everything on this computer. And it'll only take it a couple of seconds to do that because there's not much on this machine. If you have a lot of data on your computer, it's going to take some time. And you might want to do something like, turn it loose before you go to bed. Make sure that your computer is set so it won't go to sleep. Because if it goes to sleep in the middle of a backup, that could cause major problems. And just let it take care of itself. Because the first time that you run XBT on a machine, if there's a lot of data on it, it's going to take some time. Once it does the backup, the next thing it's going to do is it's going to sync the drives, which means that anything that hasn't been written to any of the hard drives that's sitting in memory, it's cached, it makes sure that that gets done. And then when it's done, it lets you know. You can actually remove the XBT drive. So let's take a look at what we have on that XBT drive now that we've done our backup. So we have a new directory that's been created called XBT Backups, and this directory contains backups from this computer. One of the features that has been recently added to XBT is that you can do it with more than one machine. So if you have a very large backup drive and you have several machines and you want to use XBT on all of them, go right ahead. We have a log file here that was created. We'll go ahead and click on that and take a look and see what's in our log file. And you'll see that it just simply tells you when the backup was taken. It will report if any errors happened when that backup was taken, and it all backed up, you're good to go. And every time you run this, it will append the latest backup to the end of this file. So if you open it up and then just hit end to go down to the bottom in your text editor or whatever you're using to read that, or use the tail command in the terminal, whatever you want to do, you can see what the last backup was, and you can look over and see if there was any errors and things like that. So that's just a little file, a little simple backup log that's created. If I open up the specific machine folder, or machine directory, whatever you call it, folder directory, then you see we got two backups. The first one is etc backup, which is the etc directory on your Linux system. That's where a lot of system configuration files are stored, and it's nice to have a backup of. You may not know how to work with that, you might not know how to get into that, but later on if you need help and somebody says, hey, I need to do you have a backup of a file in etc, or do you have this configuration stored somewhere? There it is. So if we click on the home backup, you'll see that we have the Joe directory. That's my personal account. And if we open up Ben, you'll see that it has backed itself up, so it's always here. Mailman! Seems like every time I do a video lately, the mailman comes to the door. Hold on, be right back. How dare that mailman come to the door and bring me goodies when he knows I'm in here doing a video? Where were we? Oh, we were talking about what you get in your backup here. So that's what you get. And you can use the XBT drive for other things if you want to. Just don't mess around with this folder. You can create another directory and or folder here if you want to. And just as long as you have plenty of room for your backups, no problem at all. So that's the basics of what XBT does when you take a backup. Now how do you put it back? There are several tools that you can use to put data back onto your computer. I decided that I would go ahead and add a restore function to XBT. This is really should only be used in emergency situations, because what it does is it essentially takes whatever is in that backup and then blasts it back onto the /home directory of your Linux system, which means that anything that is stored there will be put back to its former state. Now, this is a really good thing to have around if you're going to be changing your hard drive, if you just accidentally blow out a bunch of data, something like that, you can use the backup. Now, the downside is that anything that was created, or any settings you set, or anything that any user did on the system between the time that you took the backup and the time you run the restore is just going to disappear. So the system will actually roll back to whenever that is. Let's make this perfectly clear so people understand. XBT does not make copies of the entire Linux system, just the user data. However, it works in conjunction with other programs like TimeShift or CYA. You do that, a lot of those programs will store their backup information that they take automatically in the home directory. And if they do that, then every time that you run XBT, it will grab that, those snapshots. And then what you can do is you can actually, if let's say that your system completely dies and all you have is the XBT backup, then you will be able to restore your entire system using XBT, TimeShift, or CYA in conjunction with one another from what's on that backup drive. So yeah, you can use this restore function to actually do that. So what you would do is you could either run restore from the drive, or you could do a very quick and dirty install, and then you could restore all of the stuff in the home directory. That would have your backups from TimeShift and CYA, your snapshots there, and then you could use the CYA or snapshot tools, the TimeShift tools to rebuild your system and put all your programs back on. All kinds of crazy stuff that you can do with this. So anyway, let's go ahead and look at the restore function. And to get that to work, all we got to do is put in XBT -- restore. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to warn you about what we just talked about, that all the stuff that's created since the last backup will be deleted. And it's going to make sure that you want to move forward and actually do that. And so let's go ahead and choose yes, because we don't have anything that's going to change. We just took the backup. And then what it's going to ask you to do now is it's going to ask you to close any running applications. So when you're actually making a backup from your system, you can have stuff running in the background a little bit. You can be watching YouTube videos, you could be browsing a little bit on the web, but you really don't want to have heavy data intensive things going, like you're writing documents or something like that. But going the other way, when you restore a backup from the XBT drive to the computer, it is very important that you don't have a whole lot of stuff running, because if any of that stuff writes to the drive while it's being replaced, you can run into a situation where files can just vanish. They can just disappear as the backup backup is restored, and then it can destabilize the program, and then that can crash the whole system. And if that happens, you might have a major problem with your system not getting everything restored properly, and it can cause all kinds of issues. So that's why I put it in here to tell you to close your running applications. So let's continue. Now, it only took it a second or two to actually do all that, because nothing really changed from the last time that we did anything with the system. So there you go. Everything is now restored just the way it was. One more function to show you, kind of something that I added here. It's pretty standard for scripts like this to have some sort of help. Now, since we added it to our own personal bin directory, you're not going to have a man page or anything that goes with it. But in situations like this, usually this command will give you the help. So we're going to do XBT -- or -- help. And that opens up the help page, and that shows you the commands that I just showed you, and it also shows you how to get out of the page. And then of course we go through and describe how the program works and how to set up the drive and all that stuff. So it's in there, and you can take a look at that if you want to. So now now that I've showed you how CYA works, I want to show you what happens when you break CYA. So the first thing that I think I want to show you is what happens when you try and do a restore and what you're restoring isn't there. So before it runs a restore, when it goes to restore, if it runs into a problem, it will exit with an error. So let's go ahead and open this in, let's see, I need to open this as root. Or no, open it in terminal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove, we have to do that with root privileges, sudo, and we're going to remove it, r, ubu. We're just going to get rid of this, which is basically the backup we just made. Okay, so we have removed that. So if I close this terminal now, get back to our full screen terminal, and I run the restore command again, it's going to exit with an error. So it is going to ask you if you really want to do it. Say yes. And press enter to continue. And if it runs into any problems, first of all, it spits out an rsync error, which is telling you why it couldn't transfer the data. And then there is another error that is shown here, that XBT error, that the restoration failed, no valid backup directory. So that gives you some idea of what's going on. So at that point, you want to make sure that you have the right drive, you're plugging it into the right machine, all that kind of stuff, to make it work. But I did want to show you that error. So what happens when XBT, when you don't want to do a restore? Let's show you that one next. So if I say no here, it just says, okay, it exits and says XBT has been canceled. No big deal. There's your out before you mess up your system to let you get out of there. If you feed XBT garbage for an argument, it doesn't run. It checks for the permissions, and then it says, oops, this is not a valid argument, and it doesn't run. That means somebody tried to do something. So if they don't have your password, they don't get very far anyway, because then the program doesn't work without sudo permissions either. Okay, so what else can I show you here? There's a couple of more error messages and error type situations that you might have to deal with in the system. There was one more error that I wanted to show you guys. And I guess that's basically it. I think we have covered it all. So let's go ahead and jump into the code and start talking about how the system works. And this is for the guys out there who are, kind of into this, been following along with the development. Show you what my thinking is and how it came up with the logic that goes along with the system and all that kind of stuff. So we have XBT open here in a full screened text editor, and you can see what it is, and I'll just roll through it very quickly. Those of you who are interested in analyzing it deeply, you can go and check it out. So the first thing, of course, is the shebang right there, and this does run in bash, and then a little bit of description and explanation, and away we go. So the first thing that it's going to look for is if you, the person who is issuing the XBT command, has given the help argument on it, and if they have, then it's going to print out the help page. Actually, it's going to echo the help page into the less utility, and then once that's done, when they hit Q, it's going to exit the program. The next thing that it's going to do is it'll check for valid backup media. See, the help runs before any of these checks are made, because you might just be curious and forget a command, or you want to know how to do something. So the next thing here is it checks for the valid backup media, and here's where it checks for the XBT drive. And essentially, This if statement is looking for a drive that is called XBT drive, and it must be mounted at media and then the username and then the drive itself. And this is the standard procedure that most desktops in Linux do these days. When you plug a drive in, they go into the media folder, they go under your username, and then the label of the drive is displayed. If it doesn't get that, it says, oops, not going to do that, and it kicks out and it exits with an error. And then there's just a billboard here to let you know what version you're using and the name of the program and all that stuff. This is where it checks for sudo privileges. Most of the functions after this require that you have administrator privileges to run. So here's where the restore code is, and this was really the most difficult thing to come up with, and this is brand spanking new code that just worked on all day yesterday. I actually ended up getting up in the middle of the night last night and touching things up a little bit. And so this is, for those of you who are not familiar with bash programming or just programming in general, this is what's known as a nested if statement. And if statements have always been something that has been hard for me to work with. It's just that my brain doesn't really like click on the logic. I'm going to tell you, after working through this nested if statement right here, then I no longer have no problems at all working with them. I completely understand them now. If I had a problem before, it's gone, because this was the part that took forever to figure out how to do. So if you didn't click restore, see, now the reason why these are if statements is it's looking to see, did you put restore in here for an argument? And if that's the case, then yeah, I'll go ahead and do this and I'll execute this code. If they didn't, then it just keeps going. So it'll skip right over this. Check for invalid arguments before running full backup. This is very important, because if somebody would accidentally misspell restore or misspell help or something like that, then the system could very well just actually start doing a backup. Now, if you're in a situation where you're trying to restore it, the last thing that you want it to do is to start backing up from the drive when it's messed up and you know that you need to restore. So that prevents that from happening. Basically, that makes it so the only valid code that you can put in is just, XBT and these arguments right here. Which is what happens when you put in an invalid argument. It just says no. This is the beginning of the creation of the log file. And this is where we get into the synchronization part. And this is where we have the big rsync commands. First thing it needs to do is make sure that the directory for the host machine that you are backing up from is created. So it does that here, and then these are the actual commands to make rsync back everything up. And you will notice that it now preserves hard links, that it's got that option in there, and that's mainly because of time shift and the way that it stores its snapshots in a big link farm. So once it gets done with that, it echoes a little box here that says all backed up, and then it finishes up with the log, and it puts it where it needs to be. And it creates the log in temp, and then the next time you reboot the machine, it will disappear. So I don't even bother with the trying to delete it out of there before the program exits or something like that. It'll disappear. It's no big deal. And then finally, we end up by writing all cache data to drives, done, and then, bye-bye, and then exit. That's pretty much how the program works. It's very small and very compact, and it works quite well. And I think most people that use XBT will probably not use any of the other things like the help and the restore and everything. But you never know. It's something that's nice to have in there. And it's a learning experience for me to be able to put this kind of thing together. This is a big deal for me. I mean, probably some of you guys out there who are, like complete and total Linux heads that are, have been doing this forever, and you can write scripts in your sleep, are probably looking at 14 different ways to do this better. That's fine. It's just a wonderful experience, and people's feedback kind of drives me on to learn more about it. So I want to share that. And I also want to say thank you to Jeremy O'Connell from CyberWeb Solutions. I worked with him on CYA. I ran into an issue yesterday that I could not figure out. It's so simple that I'm not even going to tell you what it is. And, of course, the bash guru that he is, he went, "Oh, it's really easy, man." And I had already sat there and scratched my head for 2 hours and kept looking at it. Said, you know, syntax error at line such and such when I try and run it. Like, what am I doing wrong? And he fixed it, so it was pretty cool. So thank you everyone who has expressed interest in this program, and people who use it out there. It's turned out to be, you know, I just wrote this for me because I have very, very specific ideas about what a backup should be and how it should work, and I think they should be simple, and I think they should be snapshot based, and there you go. That's what I think it should be, and I like to keep it easy because, as I said in the beginning of the video, I've had too many people come to me and say, "Well, my computer is broken. Can you fix it? Do you have a backup?" "No." And I go, "There's not much I can do. You know, you've just lost all your pictures. You've lost all your music." And that's a really hard thing for people to face up to. I had that experience happen to me in a radio station that I was operations manager for. And they had this automation system. And I had only been there for like 3 weeks, and something happened, and I said, "Well, where's the backup?" Because I hadn't gotten far enough to be able to figure out, you know, what the deal was, and I just assumed that somebody somewhere was backing it up. They didn't. Now, we were able to recover the data, but it was a real big shocker when I was standing there and they said, "There's no backup." And I was like, it took 6 months to rebuild that system. So ever since then, I've been a little backup crazy, and been writing backup tools and backup solutions, and I don't like commercial backup software at all. Just don't. Most of it doesn't work the way I want it to. There's a few out there that are, you know, let's put it this way, some are better than others, but I would rather come up with my own solution. So that's where XBT comes from. So thank you very much, gang. I do appreciate it. And as soon as this video is done, the new version will be posted, and also this video is going to appear on the webpage to help people get started with XBT. And thank you very much for watching. Do check out Easy Linux online. Check out Easy Linux on Facebook. And if you are a Facebook user, give it a like. Check out freedompenguin.com as well. Can I say that? I don't know. Say that again. freedompenguin.com. Damn, he did it. Anyway, check them out because there's lots of great stories about Linux, and a lot of the content on this channel and also, you know, that I provide appears there as well. Thank you to Matt Hartley for syndicating that. That's a wonderful gesture on his part. Freedom Penguin has a lot of really cool people contributing to it with a lot of really great stories about Linux, how-to guides, all kinds of stuff. So you definitely want to check that out. Links in the description. We're done talking. Thank you for watching. I'm out.